Hello, everyone. It's Aunt Nikki of Your Story Hour. How are you guys doing today? I'm doing pretty good. Thanks for asking. It's time for our Chapter 16 in Eeny, Meeny, Miny, Mo, and Still Mo by Sam Campbell. Chapter 16 is not that long. Its title is No News is Awful. I suppose the more anxious one is to get news, the harder it is to get. Pining for things seems to be a sure way of not getting them. No doubt the attitude that gets one the best results in this world is to be grateful for what one has. Emerson thought this through clearly when he said, "All I have seen teaches me to trust the Creator for all I have not seen." Patience is not only a virtue, it eases the pressures which anxiety and wanting cause, and is the very key to unlock natural blessings. But it is hard to be patient. But it was hard to be patient about news from Duke. Word was so slow in coming. For days and days we had nothing beyond the first notice that something had gone wrong with him. When additional word did come, it was fragmented, incomplete, and from varied sources. There was a brief note from Duke to his parents, apparently dictated to a Red Cross worker. He was all right, he insisted, and there was nothing wrong that a cool breeze and a light rest wouldn't cure. A companion wrote that he had seen Duke, insisting that he was doing well, and said that he presumed his folks knew he had been decorated for bravery. But no one at home had heard a thing about it. It had occurred long before the injury, but it was typical of Duke to say nothing of it. There were letters from other buddies and long-distance calls from one who had reached the States. Through these we pieced together a picture that was somewhat guesswork. We learned of a tiny tropical island having enemy installations that must be destroyed, of a volunteer force that set forth to accomplish it, Captain Duke and Lieutenant Stillmo included. There was a landing in the middle of the night, fierce fighting against an invisible foe, and a tremendous explosion which had been set off so suddenly that it destroyed not only the installation but some of the landing party as well. Duke had been tossed far by the concussion. His men found him and carried him back. Lieutenant Stillmo was missing. It was said that he had run on ahead of all to do the most dangerous part of the work. The winter snows were melting, and the light of spring was in the air when we had our first direct letter from Duke. The handwriting was a little shaky, and the wording heavy for him, but it was from our Duke, and it was reassuring. He asked our prayers, not for him, but for his buddy. Lieutenant Stillmo deliberately did a job I was supposed to do. He did it to protect me. There is no word from him, but I cannot give him up. I wonder if you could guess what went through my thoughts the night we landed. It was the story of the healing of Beggar Boy. I held to it desperately. It seemed to be the only thing strong enough and real enough to meet the circumstances. It was this clinging to prayer that brought me through, I know. Lieutenant Stillmo didn't turn wholeheartedly to prayer. He believed in it, but usually wouldn't take the time. The last words I heard from him were on this subject. When we were crawling forward, I whispered to him that he had better say a few words of prayer. He laughed and said, "You say a couple for me. I'm going to be busy." That is what he asked, and that is what we must do. As to himself, Duke insisted he was all right, just suffering from shock and nervous reactions. But there was not a characteristic giggle in his whole letter. Later another letter came, which had a bit brighter tone. He expected to have leave to finish his job of getting well. He would arrive along with the springtime, and could he spend part of his time at the sanctuary? It was the thing he wanted most, next to seeing his family. Could he? If we could have shoveled up our whole sanctuary and given it to Duke, we would have done so. We couldn't reach him with our reply, as he was on his way, but we left word at his home that the place was his, to come when he could and stay as long as he wished. I believe there is no other joy available to those who remain behind quite equal to serving in some way the boys who are carrying the burden. Our hearts fairly sang as Ginny and I cut our work in the city short to return to the sanctuary and make ready for Duke. Everything must be better than it had ever been before. The beauty must be polished up, the peace and solitude deepened, and we hoped in our heart that nature would be in her finest mood. For it seemed to us that even the springtime songs of the meadow larks, olive-backed thrush, and orioles would sound less beautiful than one of Duke's cackle spasms. And there's the birds. The end of the chapter.